Step back into the quirky courtroom of the 80s and early 90s with Night Court 1984 to 1992, the offbeat sitcom that delivered outrageous humor, unforgettable characters, and plenty of heart. Led by Judge Harry T. Stone, the show became a fan favorite for its wild cases and eccentric cast of courtroom regulars, earning a lasting spot in TV history. But after the final gavel came down, what happened to the stars who made us laugh week after week? In 2025, we catch up with the beloved cast of Night Court to reveal where their careers and lives have taken them from lasting legacies on screen to surprising paths far from the spotlight. Harry Anderson was born on October 14, 1952, and at 32, he stepped into the robes of Judge Harold Harry T. Stone in 1984, the offbeat magistrate who blended magic tricks with quirky humor, jazz obsessions, and disarming compassion that turned the absurd chaos of Night Court into something oddly humane. Fans adored the character, but Anderson's real childhood was bruised, raised by a mother often described as unstable and unreliable. He drifted through broken homes and was mocked for being awkward, retreating into sleight of hand to protect himself. His career began with the grit of street hustling, earning cash as a con artist magician before catching late-night television's eye. But his rise was jagged. Failed pilots, money lost in schemes, and constant tension with Hollywood executives who disliked his disdain for show business fakery. The most damaging career stumble came when his post-Night Court projects collapsed, especially Dave's World, which ended amid sagging ratings and left him bitter, reinforcing his reputation as difficult and unwilling to play the Hollywood game. His personal life was equally rocky. 2 marriages, both ending in fractures marked by financial strain and mutual accusations, while his children often described him as distant, lost in his eccentric world. By the 2000s, he retreated from mainstream television to run a magic shop, and later a New Orleans nightclub, only to watch both ventures struggle against debts, Hurricane Katrina, and his own stubborn refusal to compromise. Health woes shadowed his final year's heart disease strokes and the flu that ultimately triggered the fatal embolism. He died on April 16, 2018 in Asheville, North Carolina, at 65, leaving behind an estate of about $10 million, a mixture of royalties, property, and residuals, though disputes and debts trimmed the figure. Fans remember the twinkle of his illusions, but behind it was a man haunted by mistrust fatigue and a lifelong battle to reconcile his talent with a world he never wanted to belong to. Charles Robinson was born on November 9, 1945, and joined Night Court in 1985 at 39, embodying Mac Robinson, the calm, plaid-clad court clerk and Vietnam veteran whose wry wisdom and quiet resilience gave the manic courtroom its steady moral center. The audience saw a character of balance, but Robinson's childhood in Houston was defined by racial prejudice, poverty, and endless mockery for dreaming of theater, while classmates dismissed him as unrealistic, forcing him to mask pain with stoicism. His career began with years of rejection, menial stage jobs, and humiliating auditions where his skin color and soft demeanor were used against him. Though admired on Night Court, he often lamented being typecast as the affable black sidekick, rather than given the roles his stage pedigree deserved. His greatest professional disappointment was the abrupt collapse of later projects, films, and shows that sidelined him into obscurity, leaving him scrambling for guest roles while his Night Court co-stars remained visible. Personally, his marriages were marked by distance and strain, and while he fathered several children, at least one relationship became fractured enough to spark gossip of estrangement. Illness later crushed him. Cancer spread aggressively, leading to septic shock and organ failure, robbing him of dignity and forcing him into hospitals he had long feared. He died on July 11, 2021 in Los Angeles at 75. his death overshadowed by Hollywood's indifference to his once pivotal presence. His net worth, about $4 million, came from decades of steady work, but his passing highlighted the cruel fate of a man who gave television one of its most grounding performances, only to be quietly erased from memory outside of reruns. His life, respected outwardly, carried the unspoken scars of typecasting health battles and the private loneliness of being admired but never fully celebrated. Richard Mall was born on January 13, 1943, and at 41, he emerged in 1984 as Bull Shannon, the towering bailiff with childlike wonder, whose hulking presence hid a sweet innocence that became Night Court's comedic backbone. The character's goofy warmth masked an edge of menace that Mall himself understood well, having been mocked in youth for his height and appearance, standing head and shoulders above peers and hiding loneliness behind a booming laugh. Hollywood was never easy for him before Bull. He had endured countless rejections, and after the show, he found himself typecast as villains and monsters, reduced to odd horror films and voice work, despite his talent. His darkest career humiliation came when he was nearly bankrupt in the late 90s, forced into cheap, straight-to-video productions just to survive, a far cry from his prime. Mall's personal life was turbulent. 2 divorces marred by bitter disputes, whispered affairs that stained his quiet reputation, and children who lived mostly away from him. Though publicly gentle, he struggled with depression and bouts of heavy drinking that few outside his circle knew. He lived increasingly reclusive in Big Bear Lake, birdwatching to escape Hollywood's rejection, and quietly refused offers to appear in the Night Court reboot, fueling speculation about long-held grudges. His final years were shadowed by isolation, though occasional convention appearances reminded fans of his enduring popularity. He died at home on October 26, 2023, at 80, his death described as peaceful, though decades of wear weighed heavily on him. His estate, about $7 million, came from decades of television voice work and smart real estate choices, but his legacy was tinged with the irony of a man loved for laughter, while privately battling alienation and disappointment. Markie Post was born on November 4, 1950 in Palo Alto, California, and joined Night Court in 1985 at the age of 35 as Christine Sullivan, the public defender whose mix of sharp legal acumen and almost naive optimism clashed hilariously with the bizarre cases and her slow-burn chemistry with Judge Harry Stone. Christine's blend of wit, warmth, and suppressed passion made her one of the most beloved figures in the series, embodying both the heart and comic tension of the show. Yet behind that polished television image, Post's life was less pristine. Born into a family where money was tight and emotions were scarred by her father's academic rigidity, she grew up insecure, often teased for her looks and accused of trying too hard to please. Her career started in game shows, working behind the scenes, and later appearing in front of the camera. But her early choices haunted her, most notably a risque Playboy appearance in 1969 that resurfaced in whispers throughout her career, undermining her wholesome TV persona. She faced professional rejection, repeatedly being dropped from projects and pigeonholed as too pretty to be serious, a frustration she rarely voiced publicly. Her personal life was equally tangled. Her first marriage ended in bitterness, and her second, though longer, was riddled with rumors of infidelity and tension over her career demands. Friends noted she buried insecurities with an obsession for work, often to the detriment of family bonds. In her later years, the cruel shadow of cancer forced her into a private battle while she tried to keep acting, hiding her pain from the public eye. Markie Post died on August 7, 2021 in Los Angeles at 70 after a long illness. At her death, Her estate was estimated at $12 million, built from television residuals, modest film roles, and smart financial decisions. Her legacy, however, was more complicated, an adored sitcom figure who spent her life battling to be seen beyond the veneer of charm. Selma Diamond was born on August 5, 1920 in London, Ontario, Canada, and was 64 when Night Court premiered in 1984, playing Selma Hacker, the chain-smoking, wisecracking bailiff whose gravelly voice and razor-sharp timing made her unforgettable. On screen, she embodied the cynical veteran of the court, a woman too smart and too jaded to take the absurdity around her seriously, and audiences adored her no-nonsense wit. But the roots of that hardened exterior were planted in a childhood marked by poverty and dislocation, as her immigrant family scraped by, and her creative ambitions were ridiculed by peers who mocked her voice and mannerisms. She clawed her way into comedy writing, shattering barriers in the 1950s as one of the only women in a male-dominated writer's room. But the triumph came with resentment. Colleagues whispered that she was difficult, and she was often underpaid compared to men with less talent. She carried grudges and was known to lash out at producers who minimized her, earning her a reputation for being abrasive off-screen. Her greatest humiliation came when she was overlooked for leading comedy roles she had helped craft for others, watching her own words bring fame to male performers while she remained in the background. Personally, Selma never married, and rumors swirled about affairs with powerful producers, though she kept her private life carefully guarded, using cigarettes as both a vice and a shield. Her health deteriorated from decades of smoking, yet she refused to quit, joking bitterly that her voice was her only true weapon. That weapon failed her on May 13, 1985, when she died of lung cancer in Los Angeles at 64, just one season into Night Court. Her estate was modest, likely under $1 million, a cruel contrast to her immense contribution to comedy, but her legacy remained that of a pioneer whose sharp tongue carved out space for women who came after her. Mel Torme, born September 13, 1925, stepped into Night Court in 1985 at age 59, playing himself the adored idol of Judge Harry Stone, a surreal stroke of casting that turned the jazz legend into part of the sitcom's mythology. His appearances were more than cameos. They blurred fiction and reality, cementing his cult status with a younger audience. Known worldwide as the Velvet Fog, Torme projected effortless sophistication, but his life was built on relentless struggle and inner storms. Raised by poor Jewish immigrants in Chicago, his talent for music became both his escape and his curse. As a child prodigy, he was praised, yet mocked, forced to grow up quickly under crushing expectations. Though he became a jazz star, his career was scarred by humiliations in the late 1960s. He tried to reinvent himself with contemporary rock-influenced albums, only to be laughed off by critics and nearly see his reputation destroyed. Behind the velvet image was a man obsessed with perfection, often berating bandmates and alienating colleagues with arrogance and a ruthless work ethic. His personal life was chaotic. He married 4 times, divorces filled with public spats and bitter financial battles, and his relationship with his children was strained by constant absences and his relentless drive. Lawsuits over royalties and disputes with record labels dogged him for years, and though he presented as charming insiders, whispered of his sharp temper and cold detachment. His biggest collapse came after a devastating stroke in 1996, which left him partially incapacitated and robbed him of the one thing he treasured most, his ability to perform. He died June 5, 1999 in Los Angeles at 73 complications from that stroke, with an estate worth around $10 million largely secured from royalties on the Christmas song and decades of touring. Even in death, Mel Torme remained a paradox, a man worshipped for his voice, but feared for the relentless perfectionism that made him both great and nearly unbearable. John Larroquette, born November 25, 1947, was 37 when he debuted as Dan Fielding in 1984, the lascivious, egotistical, yet irresistibly funny prosecutor who quickly became the show's breakout star. Dan was designed as unlikable, but Larroquette infused him with wit so sharp that audiences laughed even as they recoiled, a balancing act that earned him 4 consecutive Emmy Awards and solidified his place in sitcom history. Yet Larroquette's real story was darker. Growing up in New Orleans in a working-class family fractured by alcohol and violence, he developed early the charm and sarcasm that would later define him, but also inherited destructive habits. His career nearly collapsed in the late 1970s and early 1980s when alcoholism consumed him. The lowest point came when he was arrested for drunk driving and almost killed himself in a wreck, a failure that haunted him even as Night Court made him famous. He became known on set as brilliant but difficult, controlling scenes to his advantage, intimidating younger cast members and fueling rumors of arrogance and manipulation. His marriage to Elizabeth Cookson, while enduring, was rumored to have weathered affairs and long periods of estrangement, and his relationship with his children was complicated by his career obsession and battles with sobriety. Off-screen, he was haunted by depression, insomnia, and health scares, all while pushing himself into stage work to prove he was more than Dan Fielding. His greatest success after Night Court came on Broadway, where he won a Tony, but even that was shadowed by whispers of backstage temper and perfectionism. Now 77, he has reprised Dan in the 2023 reboot, facing old demons while capitalizing on nostalgia. With a net worth of about $9 million, he enjoys respect and financial security. But insiders still recall the darker years of a man whose genius was matched only by the shadows he fought to keep hidden. William Utai was born on September 7, 1947, in Dallas, Texas, and at 37, he appeared on Night Court in 1984 as Phil Sanders, the ragged but oddly brilliant homeless man who improbably reinvented himself as a stockbroker before meeting a surreal death under a falling piano, only for Utai to return as Phil's evil twin, Will Sanders, a sleazy attorney dripping with villainous charm. Audiences loved the absurdity of his dual roles, but behind the camera, Utai's life was colored by hardship and frustration. Raised in a conservative Texas household marked by strict discipline and financial strain, he grew up lanky and awkward, mocked for his eccentric mannerisms, retreating into theater to escape ridicule. His Hollywood journey was grueling, with years of anonymous guest spots and rejections. He became typecast as oddballs or villains roles that paid but rarely satisfied. His greatest humiliation came in the mid-1980s, when he lost a career-defining film role after clashing bitterly with a director who found him uncooperative, an incident that circulated in casting circles and cost him future film work. Though he avoided scandalous headlines, his colleagues often whispered about his obsessive commitment to roles, disappearing so completely into character that he alienated castmates and left producers wary. Relationships in his personal life often failed, strained by his workaholic tendencies and mood swings. Friends recalled long stretches where he isolated himself, pouring everything into scripts and roles while his private world crumbled. His most notable career resurgence came with his portrayal of Dr. Wilhelm Rolf on Days of Our Lives, a mad scientist role that cemented his cult status, but also trapped him in a narrow typecasting box. Semi-retired now at 77, Utai's wealth is estimated at about $2 million, composed mainly of television earnings, union residuals, and modest real estate investments. His career may never have brought A-list fame, but his eccentric presence, shaped by insecurity and relentless persistence, ensured he remains one of Night Court's most unforgettable enigmas. Marcia Warfield was born on March 5, 1954, in Chicago, Illinois, and at 32 years old, she joined Night Court in 1986 as Rosalind Roz Russell, the razor-tongued bailiff, whose impenetrable cool and sardonic humor quickly made her a standout of the show. Roz was streetwise, hard-edged, and utterly intolerant of nonsense, yet audiences adored her for her blunt honesty and sly vulnerability. Warfield's childhood, however, was far less resilient. She grew up in a fractured family in South Side Chicago, where money was scarce. Her father absent, and her mother struggling with both economic and emotional instability. Bullied in school for her size and quick temper, she learned to shield herself with comedy, masking the pain with sharp remarks that would later become her signature. Though her wit earned her recognition as a writer for Richard Pryor, and a respected stand-up comic, Hollywood proved unwelcoming to a black female comedian who refused to soften her edges. She endured years of rejections, often told she was too intimidating, and her most crushing professional failure came in the early 1990s, when a planned talk show was abruptly shelved with executives whispering she was too blunt and too political. Offstage, Warfield concealed her sexuality for decades, obeying her mother's request to remain closeted, a secrecy that left her relationships unstable and her personal life often lonely. She battled the grief of losing family members while retreating from Hollywood, her absence feeding rumors of breakdowns and professional feuds. In truth, she had quietly taken years off to care for her mother, sacrificing her career for family duty. When she came out publicly as gay in 2017, she shattered decades of silence, revealing the cost of living hidden in plain sight. Now at 71, she has returned to acting with roles in 911 and the Night Court reboot, and her net worth of about $3 million reflects a career built more on grit than glamour. Karen Austin was born on October 24, 1955, and played Lana Wagner in 1984 at age 29. Lana was introduced as the court clerk in Night Court's first season, a sharp-tongued, efficient woman who balanced Judge Harry's eccentricity with grounded wit, and her absence, after only 10 episodes, confused audiences who had grown attached to her presence. Behind the scenes, Austin's childhood was defined by hardship. Her father's alcoholism turned their West Virginia home into a war zone of broken promises, while her mother's repeated mental health crises forced young Karen to hide her pain behind a facade of cheerfulness. When she was struck with Bell's palsy during Night Court, the condition left her with partial facial paralysis. But rumors swirled that producers used it as an excuse to remove her after escalating disputes about pay and storylines branding her difficult and effectively shutting the door on a long-term place in the show. Though she recovered physically, her career never fully recovered. She was dogged by a reputation for unreliability, and the cruelest blow came when she was cast as a lead in a feature film only to be replaced days before filming. A humiliation, she admitted privately, broke her spirit. Industry whispers suggested she clashed with male directors who resented her assertiveness, and some claimed her sharpness was misinterpreted as arrogance. Her personal life mirrored the instability of her career. She had several turbulent relationships marked by jealousy and betrayal, with one long-term partnership ending in an explosive split that friends described as emotionally violent. Chronic illness continued to plague her, further derailing opportunities, and she lived with the quiet bitterness of someone who knew her talent had been squandered by forces outside her control. Today, at 69, her net worth is around 500,000 years, accumulated from sporadic roles, teaching, and modest real estate holdings. Denise Kumagai was born on July 7, 1956, and played Quan Le Robinson in 1984 at age 28. Quan Le was written as the sweet, naive, and almost otherworldly Vietnamese bride of Mac Robinson, a character that allowed audiences to laugh, while also confronting stereotypes of immigrants in a comedic setting. But Kumagai's journey into this role was marked by hidden pain. She grew up in Honolulu in a turbulent household with her father known for gambling debts that left bill collectors pounding at their door, while her mother took exhausting jobs to keep the family afloat. Classmates mocked Denise for her accent, her clothes, and for being too quiet, forcing her to retreat into books and mimicry as a survival mechanism. By the 1980s, despite her co-founding of Cold Tofu, the first Asian American improv group, she was still battling a system that fetishized and belittled Asian women. She was once told in an audition to act submissive and leave her natural humor aside, a humiliation she carried for years. Though she avoided tabloid scandals, insiders recalled clashes with casting directors who accused her of being controlling when she transitioned into casting, allegedly blacklisting actors she disliked. One devastating career moment came when she lost a recurring role on a primetime sitcom after producers claimed her look was not marketable, a coded rejection that left her battling depression. Her personal life, though tightly guarded, was said to be marked by volatile romances, whispers of affairs with married colleagues, and friendships broken by jealousy and mistrust. Despite later successes in voice acting, she endured the heartbreak of watching her improv troupe marginalized while others stole their ideas, fueling a bitterness she rarely displayed publicly. Now 69, she lives in relative quiet, with a net worth of about $1 million, most of it from residuals, teaching, and steady but unspectacular work. A modest sum that underscores how an industry quick to use her image was slow to reward her groundbreaking contributions. Paula Kelly, born October 21, 1942, played Liz Williams in 1984 at age 42, the first public defender on Night Court, and though she was written as intelligent, compassionate, and socially aware. What made her stand out was the sharp dignity she carried into a show built on absurdity, instantly giving depth to the ensemble. Fans connected to her quiet authority, yet her abrupt disappearance after one season left a cloud of unanswered questions. Kelly's childhood in Jacksonville was marked by deep poverty, racism, and ridicule for her ambitions. She learned to suppress her pain behind elegance, but the scars of being othered followed her. A Juilliard-trained dancer, she stormed Broadway and Hollywood, but her career was continually disrupted by barriers that kept black women in supporting or sexualized roles. Her bold choice to pose nude for Playboy in 1969, seen by some as empowering, became a scandal that cost her roles and led to whispers about her being too provocative. She clashed with producers on Night Court, who reportedly viewed her activism and insistence on better scripts as disruptive, and her biggest professional failure was losing the chance to cement herself as a sitcom star, effectively erased from the series after only a year. Behind the glamour, her marriage to British director Don Chaffee was turbulent, shadowed by jealousy and long absences, and when he died in 1990, she spiraled into grief and isolation. Friends said she masked loneliness with poise, but her later years were marked by health struggles and fading opportunities. She died on February 8, 2020, in Whittier, California, of heart failure at 77, leaving behind an estate worth about $1.5 million earned from decades of stage, screen, and television, but far less than the brilliance she had poured into her work. Her death reignited painful truths about how Hollywood wastes extraordinary women turning Paula Kelly's story into both a celebration and an indictment. John Astin was born on March 30th, 1930, and stepped into Night Court in 1985 at age 54 as Buddy Ryan, the erratic, childlike father of Judge Harry Stone, whose manic bursts of affection and delusion gave the show both humor and depth. Audiences adored the quirkiness of Buddy, yet the man behind the role carried a lifetime of scars and contradictions. Astin's childhood in Baltimore was spent in poverty, his family unable to provide stability, and his classmates mocked his stutter and threadbare clothes. Comedy became his shield, a way to mask insecurity with eccentricity. His climb to fame included humiliating failures. He was once fired from a Broadway production after clashing with its tyrannical director, and later endured the cancellation of a sitcom designed as his star vehicle, a brutal rejection that nearly destroyed his credibility with networks. Though he became beloved as Gomez Addams years earlier, insiders knew him as volatile, prone to outbursts when he felt overshadowed, and some younger actors described him as manipulative in rehearsals, undermining them to protect his dominance. His personal life was equally stormy. His marriage to Patty Duke was a public battlefield filled with explosive arguments, accusations of betrayal, and lingering bitterness that bled into his relationships with his children. Even after divorces and remarriages, his reputation for intensity never left him, and his private struggles with depression and loss deepened after Duke's death, leaving him visibly shaken. His greatest heartbreak was the way Hollywood seemed to pigeonhole him as a caricature, making it nearly impossible to secure serious leading roles despite his undeniable talent. He sought solace in Buddhism and teaching drama at Johns Hopkins, where he became both mentor and enigma, a man both revered and feared. Now 95, he lives quietly in Baltimore, with an estate valued around $6 million, composed of royalties, real estate, and savings. While the public remembers the laughter he inspired, those closer know his life as a turbulent quest for respect, haunted by unfulfilled ambitions and the ghosts of opportunities lost. Ellen Foley was born on June 5, 1951, in St. Louis, Missouri, and at 33, she joined Night Court in its second season, 1984 to 1985, as Billy Young, the fiery public defender, whose passion and righteousness made her an instant contrast to the chaos of the courtroom, though her tenure ended abruptly after only one season. On screen, Billy was principled and determined, but behind that mask, Foley's own story was turbulent and chaotic. Raised in a most strict Catholic household in St. Louis, she endured an emotionally cold upbringing where affection was rare and criticism constant, driving her to seek refuge in music and theater. Though her powerful voice launched her into stardom most famously as the female lead on Meat Loaf's Paradise by the Dashboard Light, the success came with Demon's grueling tours, clashes with managers, and accusations of erratic behavior haunted her. Her most devastating professional blow came when she was dismissed from Night Court, officially due to lack of romantic chemistry with Harry Anderson, but privately due to conflicts with producers, a dismissal that branded her as difficult and made future television opportunities scarce. In music, her stormy relationship with Mick Jones of The Clash became legendary. Their volatile affair inspired him to write "Should I Stay or Should I Go?" a breakup anthem that immortalized their toxic cycle of love and betrayal. Her personal life spiraled further with failed romances, substance use, and the strain of balancing Broadway with rock stardom, while friends recalled her struggling with loneliness despite the chaos around her. The loss of loved ones and the fading of rock's golden years forced her into repeated reinventions, eventually turning to teaching and local theater to stabilize herself. Now 4. Foley continues to perform her net worth, estimated at around $4 million, bolstered by royalties, stage work, and teaching. Her assets include music rights property in New York and savings from decades of reinvention, making her both a survivor and a symbol of the high cost of fame, lived in the shadows of both brilliance and self-destruction. Thank you for joining us on this nostalgic journey through classic television history. If you enjoyed learning about the cast of Night Court and where they are now, don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, subscribe for more vintage Hollywood retrospectives, and share your thoughts in the comments below. We love hearing your memories and suggestions, so let us know which TV show or movie cast you'd like us to feature next.